Hey everyone, welcome back to another time-lapse video. My name is Alaire, and I'm a comic artist, and this is just what I do. In this video, I'm working on Crown and Anchor Book 3. Right now we're in issue 13, and this is page 8. For those who are just jumping into this video, we're at a moment in the story where our crew finds a derelict ship, and they investigate to see if anyone is still on board and needs help. But it's turning out that these guys are the ones who are needing help. There are, in fact, people on the ship, but they seem to be disappearing left and right. Or worse. They keep finding evidence of things that are uncanny and not very normal, so they are growing suspicious and concerned. So, I recorded this video a long time ago and realized, oh, I still have some videos in the can that need to be made. So this is one of them. And as you can see, I was having some, I don't know about difficulties, but having some challenges with Heb's face. I wanted to get the right expression, and then after that it was a means of, or rather a matter of drawing the right expression. Finding it and then drawing it correctly. That's what I'm trying to say. So, they do find a passenger on board. They bust open a door to free her, and she's disappeared. So now, Macht is saying, let's go after her and try to save her, and Heb would normally be on board for this sort of thing, but there have been one too many spookies, and he would like to go home now. Whether it's the unknown or very dark, tight spaces, he does not want any part of it. So, right now there's a dispute about what should be done. So Heb is pointing to a hole in the ground. Not the ground, but a hole in the floor where the woman was just a few seconds ago, and now she's gone. And they're not sure what is going on. So, this video will be mostly me trying to talk about possible challenges I was going through on this page, or what things I liked. I probably won't talk the whole video, but I will talk about some things. So, jumping forward in time, I have been interested in Sam Does Art videos, particularly the ones about like TikTok and Instagram tutorials. Because I don't like either of those platforms, I was just wanting to see what kind of things people were putting out there. And understandably, there's a lot of stuff that's put out there that is really good and really helpful. There's some videos and culture of these places that I find to be annoying. But overall, there's some really good tutorials out there. But it was easier watching them through Sam Does Art because then I didn't have to look for them. And I didn't have to deal with surfing through millions of posts and art tutorials myself. But I have been very inspired lately, which is not really normal for me. Things changed a lot after starting our family, and also just, you know, doing comic work all the time. I don't necessarily feel like I have like just random ideas anymore. I don't really have solid ideas anymore, which is okay. A lot of my energy is spent making these comics, and I enjoy them very much. And a lot of the experimenting I want to do, I just do in the comic itself. But sometimes I open my sketchbook and I go, man, I don't feel like drawing anything. I don't know what to draw. After watching some of these Sam Does Arts videos, though, I have felt inspired to study more. Sometimes in Crown and Anchor, I've had some really good poses. Usually, you know, with assistance from references and such. Sometimes without reference. But sometimes my poses get really stiff, I feel. They don't feel fun, they don't feel dynamic, and sometimes they don't need to be. But other times I'm like, I need some help. And I don't know how to get it because I don't know if I can find this pose or I can't find the pose, and that's okay. But more likely than not, you can find the pose. There's so many references out there that may not be 100% what you're looking for, but will help you get really close. Because you're the one who's supposed to be doing most of the work anyway. You know, tracing will help you learn a lot. But using a reference means you are using it to help guide or assist you. You might not necessarily be using the reference to use it completely or 100%. I find with a lot of the references I use, I will take like several different pictures and take bits of those pictures that I need and then kind of Frankenstein them together, and then that will help me do what I want to do. So in this case, you know, that's usually what helps me a lot. But I also know that it doesn't help to just study, you know? The more you study, the more you practice, the more your brain and your hands are going to remember what to do or what it feels like. So I've been on kind of a posing and gesture kick lately, and it's been fun. There's a lot of really neat places to find references. I use Sketchfab for 3D models. I remember when I was working on a different comic, I was looking for a firearm that doesn't really exist anymore. And I was trying to look for it in a particular perspective. I was not finding it. I was not finding the details. But someone had made this same firearm in Sketchfab, like in Blender, and uploaded it on Sketchfab. And so I was able to find that firearm, put it in the pose I needed, or angle I needed, and then I was able to draw it from there, and it was amazing. So thank you, 3D artists. You have saved my life so many times, and I think I just want to use 3D models for a lot of things. Poses being one of them. Head angles being another one. I have found myself going back over and over to Sketchfab to just get a head angle, or just a model of a head, and then angle it how I want. And it helps so much. Adorka stock is another really great place for pose references, especially their newer stuff. Their old stuff is great, but the newer stuff, they're kind of, some of them are wearing suits with the lines drawn on them, so you can see how the shape works and how perspective works. But they have so many great models at Adorka stock. So many different body types, heights and weights, group poses, couple poses, action poses. It's wonderful. So I've been trying to do that more. And this has been the most excited I've been about, like, drawing outside of comics for a long time. So thanks, Sam Does Arts, for trudging through the bowels of hell so that you can make these videos, and then I could watch them and then go, oh, that's really useful. I'm gonna try that. He also offers really good tips as well. So that's where I'm at right now. So yes, that's how I am mentally and artistically right now. So back when I was drawing this page, you know, I wasn't quite there. I try so hard in these comics to find angles and poses that, you know, fulfill what I need them to do, but are also interesting to look at. So with this particular panel, I could have had them all like standing in a circle or on a flat plane talking to each other. But I want to make sure that I have a good array of close-ups and compositions and perspectives. And that can be hard. Sometimes your first few drafts are not the ones that you go with in the end. But I like this panel. It's different than my other panels. I really love close-ups. So having a panel like this is not only a challenge, but it provides variety to what readers are going to look at. And even though it's challenging, that's what's going to help me improve the most. So, yeah. I also want to get better at drawing this perspective of kind of a bird's eye view. And it's hard. I think I'm better at doing this than a worm's eye view, where you kind of look at the character from the ground up. But you know, I'm practicing. I feel like I'm getting better, but I probably need to use more references and also just practice more. Lately, I've also been using my husband as a reference. He helped me a lot in the last comic we did, the one with the firearm that I needed to find. I think I had a reference of Toben, like, holding our broom like a firearm so I could get the pose right. And then I had him lying face down on the floor because he was supposed to be dead. He's supposed to be dead! For all of you Emperor's New Groove fans. And that was very helpful too. Like, taking pictures of your own models and props is very, very useful as well. In this case, it's hard for me to take my own reference photos because I can't be this far away from my husband without climbing on a roof or climbing a tree. So I just have to do my best. I guess he could always take a picture of me at this angle. So things could work out. There's lots of ways to get references you need, you know, without having to guess so much and without having to use generative AI. I understand some artists use Gen AI as references, and sometimes it could help because it is just stolen artwork. The problem is that not all of it is going to be exact. Not all of it is going to be true to life, so you could be practicing incorrectly. So if you're looking for a character that's dressed a certain way or looks a certain way or has a certain body type, like, you can find those things online. It's just you're gonna probably have to do a little bit more work. You're not gonna... You just can't be so lazy. I just feel it's lazy. Again, I understand, like, sometimes you gotta get things done quick. or you don't have the spoons to look for references for a long time. But it really does go a long way, you know? So I might not be able to find every reference I need, but I can still come close, and I can still make good art that way. So, for those who are starting out in art or who want to make their art better, like, references are the way to go. It really helps you learn how forms work, helps you understand, like, the shapes of things. Like, I've joked in the past that arms and legs on people are just drumsticks. It's just chicken. People are just made of food shapes. But, like, everything's got shape. If you understand shapes or break things down into shapes, you can build things a little easier. Things just make more sense. I just don't recommend using generative images as references because they're not going to... They might teach you incorrectly, especially with animals, especially with like reflections or lighting or shadows. When it comes to people, just go look at people. There's so many photos of people on the internet. You're gonna find someone that you want to draw. If you're looking for outfits, there's like there's photos of real outfits, there's artwork of other people's ideas that you can get inspiration from. It's all out there. So go find it, you know? Take your time. If you don't have time, move on to something else until you do have time, I guess. Or, you know, there's always another way. I know sometimes you might feel like there's only one way or the other way, but there's always another way. I believe in you. So, we're now going on to inking. I always think inking will not take me very long, but it always does. I'm like, alright, I drew all the art took me the longest to do, which it does. So inking should be quick, right? Because I'm just outlining stuff, coloring things in, adding details. But no. I used to think inking would take me an hour, but inking takes me a long time. So, sorry that these videos are so long. You could blame it on inking, though, if you'd like. I'm going to, just to make myself feel better. Alright, so now we're drawing a hole. So this is an example of a reference being kind of hard to find. Because your brain's going to be like, okay, how do I find an image of something specifically that's, you know, a big gaping hole in a metal floor? Well, you're not going to find that very often. So then you have to simplify it and go, okay, maybe I just need to find a metal hole. Like, a hole in metal. What would do something like that? Maybe a bullet hole in a sheet of metal. So, for this particular panel, that is what I looked up to draw it. And, you know, it still feels weird because I'm like, in my brain, metal shouldn't do this or look like this or something. But that's the reference that helped me in this particular case. And it's not perfect, but it is there. It's a thing now. It's official. So whether your art is how you want it to be or not, just make that art. because there's gonna be people out there who are just completely amazed and appreciative of what you do and how you come up with things. And sometimes the best references are the simple ones. Anyways, that was just on my mind. I've really been wanting to use reference more often. You know, I may not use it all the time, but I definitely try to use it when I need it. Alright, so now we're just blocking in these big dark shapes. Yeah. That's all we're doing. We're just coloring in things now. You might see these letters and numbers on some of these comic pages, like up there it says S1. That's just a note for me to make that particular area a certain density and opacity of my screen tones. So S1, to me, is my first screen tone layer. It's my darkest one. So that's the one I want to use in the background. If you see S2 or S3, those are just my my other ones. S2 is usually 50%, S3 or 4 is usually 25% opacity. And I love making these dark pages. I find them to be fun, and I feel like they're just more full and lifelike that way. I'm not very good at making things look like real life, but that's also not what I aim for all the time. I am constantly trying to, you know, make my characters look more realistic, but also remain true to how I see them in my head. So I'm always having to practice how I draw them. Because to me, their proportions are very precise, and I don't always get that right. And so while this is also a fantasy world, I still want things to look, you know, like they belong there. Like they're realistic for that world, if that makes sense. I don't know if I am making sense. This is the first comic time-lapse video that I've narrated, and honestly, I feel like there's not a lot I can say, because I literally just draw the thing, and then I finish the thing, and that's it. Some pages I feel like I do have more to talk about and more to say. I don't feel like I have a lot to say on this page in particular. But I will say I did enjoy drawing the background in this particular panel. I liked how I drew the kelp that shouldn't be there. And I like drawing coral. I like looking at coral. But sometimes when I'm drawing it, I'm just like, does this actually look like coral, or does this look stupid? And then I go find reference of coral, and I'm like, I guess this is just how coral be. They're just like these little trees. So, you just draw little trees, and that's how you draw coral. That is what I've learned from using references and drawing lots of coral in this part of the story. So after this, I have about, let's see, this is 8, so I have 9, 10, and 11. So those are the last comic page time lapses I've recorded. I will do my best to do narration on those. There might be a couple that I'll talk about more, but I really don't know if I have much to say about them. So I might not narrate for most of the video, but I will try to talk about some of it. Oh yes, the little shadows. I do enjoy making shadows with my brush. I use one brush to draw. It's a very scratchy brush. If you zoom in, like, my line work looks very pixely. More than I feel it should. But I love this brush because from far away it looks nice and smooth, but I can still do the nice soft, like, hatching. And it just makes sense to me. I'm also trying harder to not be afraid to fill in spaces with black. A lot of comics look as amazing as they do because there is that heavy contrast. I don't tend to do heavy contrast. I think it's very important to have line variation and line weight. But as far as filling in like tons of spaces with black, I'm not making that kind of comic. I'm not making a noir comic. I'm not making a superhero comic. But when it comes to these kinds of pages where the setting is like kind of creepy, things are dark and spooky, that's when I can go crazy. And it's fun. So, you know, in that corner, it's just all black. I initially did this because it is a dark and creepy and crusty place. And most of this panel is going to be screen toned. All the characters are going to be in shadow except for where the light is coming from that door. I don't know if there's any light fixtures in there, but that's just where I put the light source. You'll see that when I get to the screen tones. And here I am adding more bits and bobs. The inking layer is also important because that is where I cover up most of my mistakes or I make my corrections. So as you can see, I was adding more things to the ground or around these gross underwater things that should be underwater but are growing in this ship. And I was able to make this coral more bumpy looking at the top. So yeah, this is what the inking layer is for. And I know I could do it all together when I do the line art, but sometimes when I have to go back and change things, I want to be able to just separate things instead of redoing even more. Sometimes I still have to redo a bunch of stuff, but I feel like it's easier for me personally to just keep those pieces separate. So we're just inking the rest of this panel and the characters, and then we will be off to the screen tone races. So, I have one brush for drawing. But I have 2 or 3 that I use for textures. This is my nice scritchy scratchy brush. And I love it very much. I use it for things like this that need just need to be beat up a little bit or look a bit crusty. I love drawing crusty things. When things are not crusty enough, I feel like I'm drawing it wrong. It's really just because it needs crust. A nice layer of crust makes things better. As you can see, I also will use it for shading or making more interesting shapes in the panel, or for adding just these motes in the air. These menacing motes. I've made my screen tone layers. What I normally start with is a special screen tone layer. This is my first white layer. So I make a layer and I fill it with white completely. And I put it underneath the line work. Sometimes when I need the same screen tone multiple times, but I don't want them to touch, I will just make a copy of that. Be like, all right, this is S1 part 2, this is S1 part 3, however many times I need. But I usually have 4 layers that I screen tone on. I have the darkest layer, the mid-tone layer, and then 2 light layers. I have 2 light layers because while one light layer can be, filled in somewhere, I use the second one to make shadows on things that are white. For example, that would probably be like, under Heb's nose or under his chin or something. Or, where his eyes are. Or where Max, for Max's shirt, like just as you saw. So normally I keep these, screen tone layers apart, but sometimes I do stack them. Usually for panels like this, where it is supposed to be pretty dark, I'll stack layers. So what I do here is I select all the layers I want to be a particular tone, I fill them in, I go to the next layer, and I do the same thing. Oh, and look at this, I'm trying to figure out more texture. Bleh. I do have another brush I use for texture, not as often. Once in a while I'll use it, but I find myself not really liking it these days. I use a different brush for more globby black textures, like for water or for clouds. So after I'm done laying down the screen tones very messily, I go and clean them up. Which is why the screen tone layer also takes me a long time. But that's just how I like to do things. It's either I slap them down and clean them up, or I take as much time being very precise where I use my lasso tool, and then fill them in. So either way, they're going to take me time, but this is also just easier for me to be like, okay, here's where these tones are. Plus, it's satisfying cleaning them up, so yeah, I don't know. I might get to the point where using the lasso tool precisely is what I do. But it's not like my hand's very steady. But I guess you just loop things. By looping things, I just mean sometimes I have to circle the same area over and over because I missed just a smidgen. And I have to just go round and round and round until I have every part of that area that I need. So right now we're cleaning up the S1 layer. We're cleaning up all the barnacles, cleaning up the shoes. We're erasing stuff where there doesn't need to be screen tone. And we're adding highlights in some places. I normally add highlights like on the column in a separate layer. That's my second white layer. I know I still haven't really told you what I use my first white layer for, but don't worry, it'll come. Alright, so I decided to go and fill this in with S1 because I think I had forgotten at that point. I don't know if I could speak for myself entirely because this was done in the past, like late last year. But yeah, it was a busy winter. It was a busy winter getting this one comic done for a client. And then we kind of just got back on our feet. So we're doing the best we can. But I definitely need to finish these videos for you guys. So that's what I'm gonna do. So we clean everyone up so that they're nice and pretty. Boop. So instead of like erasing everything, sometimes I will just go and erase around the perimeter of something and then select and cut the excess. And that makes things easier as well. So cleaning up isn't too bad. As you can see, I just traced around Mac's head where I didn't need screen tones, and then I just selected and deleted. Yeah, I love adding highlights to things. I like making things crusty, but I also like making things shiny. Alright, so there's our bullet hole / hole in the floor. And, you know, it doesn't look too awful. Which is, you know, what you want as an artist. You want it to look okay, and not too awful. But even if it looks awful, it's just a learning experience. Yeah, and sometimes I'll have to look back at my other screen tones and be like, am I doing this right? Is this in the right spot? Sometimes it is. Alright, so that was S2. And this is S2.2. Oh yeah, and I have a way to patch up screen tones if I mess up. So just like that area that you saw that I filled in, I'll select it, I'll fill it in with the screen tone I need, but then they're gonna look different. Like one's gonna be more filled in than the other. So I just take the whole area and I use my screen tone brush to erase, and then I use my screen tone brush to draw again, and then I just kind of fill it back in. And that's my my patch job. So that's fun. I do many, many patch jobs. Y'all have no idea. Alright, so we're done with S2.2 and we're going on to S3. So these are the lightest tones. They are important. I also had to come to terms with something a few months ago in terms of screen tones. I love a good manga that uses really nice screen tones. In a lot of shoujo, I find they don't really go too dark. Everything's really light. And I'm not really into that. I love when manga can go light, and they can go mid, and they can go dark. I love the spectrum of screen tones. But I always thought, like, well, I have to make sure that this blends into this right, or I can only use 3 of them and they can't overlap. And so I was looking through book 2, and I was like, I remember I had so much fun doing screen tones, because that was the first book that I did screen tones with. And I was like, how come these look so nice? Because I think they look nice. I think I did a really good job with screen tones in book 2. And I had been struggling with screen tones in this book, and I couldn't really figure out why. And so part of it was that with the darker screen tones, I would take my screen tone brush and make a more, would you say more opaque or less opaque? I guess more transparent eraser. Right, so not 100% opacity. I'd put it to like 30% opacity, and I'd basically make really fine highlights where the darker screen tones were, especially on skin. And I feel like that added so much. And I was like, well, but it doesn't seem to be what, like, manga creators do. But maybe I need to read more manga. I've been reading some manga lately that don't really have a lot of screen tones, but they're still gorgeous, you know. Screen tones don't necessarily mean, like, you know, the best art. I like using screen tones because I love screen tones, and I feel like it enhances this comic a lot. I feel like they are very necessary. But not every comic needs screen tones or color. Color's wonderful. I love color. I just don't do it so good. But I also realized, like, I just stacked screen tones on top of each other as much as I wanted in book 2. And I was like, those are the things I've been missing from this book. Yeah, I came into book 3 feeling really rusty. I believe it was because I was working on some other project or doing some kind of hiatus, and it had been a long time since I had done Crown and Anchor. So jumping into a new book, being like, what do I do? That didn't feel very good. And so I was trying to figure out, like, how did I do screen tones before? It's been so long. So it wasn't until a little after this point that I made that realization of, like, yeah, I made sure that I added just a little bit of those, like, extra highlights. Not like shiny stuff, but like a little bit of that light bouncing off of an object is what I was missing to make it feel like really, I don't know about real. I don't think real's the right word, but like better rendered, I guess. Like, this is a 3D object, you know. So that was my realization, is like, yeah, I need to add more lighting, and I just need to stack as many screen tones as I need to accomplish the look I need. Okay, so now we're on the white layer, the first white layer. So the reason I have a white layer at 25% opacity over the screen tone layers is so that I can make shadows. This is where I just erase stuff and make shadows. Isn't that neat? Maybe it's not neat. But when I first discovered how to do this in book 2, it changed everything. My screen tones in issue 6 of book 2 are terrible because I'm using them for the first time. But you get to like the middle of it onward, and that's when I have this figured out. I don't know where the white layer idea came from. My brain is a steel trap and a swamp, so I can't really remember, but the white layer on top of the screen tones is what helps me do these shadows. And then I use my screen tone brush to make my soft shadows. I just use like a roundish eraser to make my hard shadows first, and then I go and I take my screen tone brush, make it really small, and then that's how I make my soft shadows, where they're kind of fuzzy. And this is how I do pages. I probably should have done this narration on a page I really like, but this, I mean, it's okay. So my second white layer, as you probably saw, is where I take a white brush and I go and draw on the dark stuff so that you can see the dark stuff. Okay, so really quickly. Yes, the white layer is where I draw over all the blacks, where I want to separate some black shapes from other black shapes, like Heb's sword against the background or against something else that's black, and also to bring out the design of his jacket. And I also use the white layer to add highlights and sparklies and shiny stuff, like with the door that's open. I love the white layer because that just allows me to add just a little cherry on top to everything else, and I love that. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning into this video and giving it a peek. If you want to watch me draw live, I stream on Twitch. If you want to read our comics, you go to rossico.art. And I will have more videos for you. Let me know if you want more comic time-lapse videos. I'll see you when I see you. Bye!